Last week at Tapestry's men's group, we were talking about the delicate balance of staying informed but not being overwhelmed by the world. While we have the responsibility to care for our wider world, we also have to take care of ourselves. The metaphor that came up was the familiar instruction to make sure your own oxygen mask is securely in place before helping those around you. In various ways, we are all putting on our own oxygen masks first. At least I hope we are. To me, there are two different categories of taking care of ourselves. One is passive, and the other is a little more active. One is slipping into oblivion, dissociating from the outside world and taking a break. The other is digging in more deeply to those things that are life-affirming, the comforting things that give our lives meaning. It's a choice that I honestly make every Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon is a big crash time for just about every minister I know. I usually go home and eat a big lunch and take a big nap, and then the decision comes. Sometimes I drift into watching garbage escapist television. I mean, truly mindless stuff. Sometimes I go outside and go for a walk. These two different types of tending to myself. There's a zone-out kind that takes zero effort. However, if I summon the effort to expend just a little bit of energy, I can be involved in a type of active self-care, something that actually recharges my battery, not just a break. When I'm able to summon the effort to engage with the world, I go out for a long walk near my home. I don't put any effort into deciding which one. It's the same one every time. I don't take music, and truth be told, I prefer to walk alone. It's as simple as possible. And still, the fruit of that time is dramatically different and more helpful than the junk food, zone out, scrolling social media of watching television. About 50% of the time, I'm able to summon the effort for active self-care. This Sunday, as we're all tending to our own oxygen masks, I want to explore how reconnecting with our place in nature, settling into the comfort of our home beyond our four walls, can bring a sense of renewal. Our reading this morning came from Asia Suler. She's an herbalist, an educator, and author. She's deeply rooted in Appalachia. It was a journey for her to find her way there, though. Originally from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Asia attended Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Then she did what all the cool kids did. She moved to Brooklyn. Over a few years there in Brooklyn, she and her roommates transformed a litter-strewn, dead postage stamp of a backyard into a garden. Even with all the work involved, she shocked herself and her landlord. Even in that tiny, blighted spot, restoration and resilience was there, just waiting for some loving hands to make it happen. Then life pulled Asia away from her urban roots. She followed her gut and headed to the Blue Ridge Mountains to enroll in Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine. She found a small 1920s cottage for rent that was so off-kilter, she says, that if you put a pencil on the kitchen table, it would roll right off. But it had enough land to dig a proper garden and the peace and quiet that her soul longed for. It wasn't quite as idyllic as it sounds, actually. It was a bit more like searching desperately for a path that was bearable. In college, Asia began her long struggle with chronic health issues that caused tremendous pain in her body. She writes, quote, "The world inside my body was so uncomfortable, I had to go outside. But I know now that the intelligence of my body was pushing me into the woods because it understood that if I visited the bright ponds lined with willows, these mirrors within the earth, I would come home to myself. My body knew that this homecoming was the first step to healing." Once herbalism school was complete, Asia enrolled in a class in Chinese medicine, particularly focused on Taoist stone medicine. There was so much to learn and so many different stones. She furiously took notes. But mica, this peculiar collection of minerals, really took root in her curiosity. Mica, it turns out, is found all over the world, but is especially prominent in the Appalachian Mountains. In fact, mining mica was a big industry there once upon a time. Because of its unusual structure, mica can be both an insulator from heat, but also lets heat pass through it. In the 19th and 20th centuries, mica was used as isinglass, as windows for wood stoves and kerosene lanterns. Incidentally, I was shocked last night after having written this sermon. I went to see the musical Oklahoma, and there's a reference to isinglass in the song Surrey with a Fringe on Top. For thousands of years before that, mica was important to indigenous people of Appalachia, particularly the Cherokee. And it traveled with the people along ancient trade routes. It's been found hundreds of miles away. As carvings of claws and arrows and carvings of human forms and ovals carved out of Appalachian mica. Some archaeologists believe that those oval pieces were used for mirror gazing. It's a sort of divination practice, using that reflective surface to see visions from beyond. But the real point of Chinese medicine class was about using those stones for healing. Because its flat, shiny surface, mica is really good at reflecting light and images. It can be used as a mirror of sorts, to help people see their true selves through the lens of nature. Mica can remind people that regardless of their journey, their trials, their tribulations, that they can always reconnect with who they are, a being of inherent good, worthy of belonging in this earth home. It's a bit of a cheerleader, reminding us that we belong here on this earth. Now, Chinese medicine and Taoist stone medicine may not be everyone's jam, but from Thomas Starr King and Henry David Thoreau and Beatrix Potter, all the way to today's climate activists and scientists, Unitarian Universalists have a deep investment in connection with the world around us. Our list of values clearly calls out interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life, and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. In our reading from today, and more from wise people I listen to, I hear reference to the more than human world. Did that phrase catch you in the reading? Some people are using more than human world as a substitute for the word nature. Why, you may ask? Because typically when we use the word nature, we're referring to things that are outside of human civilization. Nature is out there somewhere. But that is so misleading. There's very little on earth that human life does not influence today. And our lives are lived within nature. The dirt under our feet, the timbers that hold up most of our homes, the water in our pipes, the rare minerals in our phones and computers, the fuel that powers our cars and heats our homes come from deep within the earth. The food, every bite of food that we eat, is the blessing of plants in the dirt performing photosynthesis. When we talk of nature as something other than our human experience, we create a false separation. We cast ourselves out of our true home and abandon our responsibility as participants in this big world. Human life and civilization is really a subset within nature, not something different from it. It's a big, beautiful, interdependent web of which we are a part. Perhaps you can dismiss this as semantics or green virtue signaling, but I think the word choice of the more than human world shines an important light on the way we understand our place, our sense of home and belonging. Yeah, there is life outside of human reach, a more than human world. And our human experience is occurring within nature. More and more, I'm intrigued by how the landscape of North America has been shaped by human involvement for thousands of years. What colonial settlers came and thought was an untouched natural paradise has actually been shaped intensely by human hands. This week I learned about research in the Amazon rainforest. A report published in 2023 shows how indigenous peoples' land in the Amazon acts as a robust carbon sink, absorbing all of that carbon in the air. And what they found is that the land that's still managed by indigenous peoples is way healthier, way more abundant, way more diverse, and able to hold that carbon better than land that is privately owned or just left to its own devices. That is fascinating stuff. All of these stories remind me that we are home here. And if we are careful and patient, we human animals can actually contribute to the well-being of the more than human world. There are possibilities of thriving beyond exploitation. A sense of home and belonging is one of the most important pieces of our emotional well-being. We belong here on this good earth with our non-human friends and neighbors. You belong here. In these days of confusion and political turmoil, we can find our connection, our sense of self, perhaps, back in nature. That point of connection may come through spending some time with your non-human animal friend, looking into their eyes, knowing that you understand and appreciate one another. Is a tremendous cue to our belonging in this web. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a piece of land in a garden that you are familiar with. Perhaps you get to see the magic and the abundance that can happen when we engage with this world. Perhaps you are of the lucky few that get to gaze upon the ocean regularly. That's actually where I went in that little meditation. If you spend more than a few seconds, that expansive beauty welcomes you in, saying, "This is for us to share in together." and it is good. Asia Suler writes, "Go looking for yourself, and eventually you will find Micah. Common, spectacular, radiant, and familiar. Something many-layered and made to translate light. A being who is able to withstand the heat of these times and conduct the gifts given into this world. You are so much more brilliant than you realize." So may it be, and amen.